Hey Glimpses fans, Matt Williams here, and I've got a special treat for you in this next episode. Remember Home Improvement? Of course you do. Well, we're diving into the Tool-filled nostalgia with none other than Richard Karn. Tool Time was more than just a TV show. It was an experience. But Richard's journey goes way beyond the set of our favorite sitcom. From Hollywood to Broadway, this guy's done it all. Join us as we laugh, reminisce, and unveil the man behind the tool belt. Trust me, this is one glimpse you won't want to miss. Hi, I'm Matt Williams. Welcome to Glimpses. My guest today is a dear friend and a very funny actor, author, and former game show host. But most of you will recognize him as Al Borland on the television series Home Improvement, Mr. Richard Karn. Welcome to Glimpses.
Wow, it's been a few years.
It's been a few years.
Usually I see you in New York.
Yes.
You know, when we're making the New York tour.
When you come and see plays and we have dinner and
stuff
all
like
that.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know this, and I did a little research on you, and I didn't know we've got a few things in common.
We have a lot of things in common.
Well, we do, but I didn't know this. Your legal name is actually Richard Karn Wilson.
Yeah.
And when you moved to New York, you got a Michelob beer commercial.
Yeah.
And SAG, there was already a Richard Wilson in SAG.
Who I finally saw in something.
Did you?
He played the old magician in a TV show about Merlin. It was called Merlin.
Okay.
And he was an older English actor.
And so you had to change your name, so you became Richard Karn.
Uh-huh.
When I moved to New York, my legal name is Mark Williams. And I started doing commercials. The first big one was Fill It to the Rim with Brim. And so I couldn't use Mark Williams, so I became Matt Williams. So both of us are under this pseudonym.
Wow.
Did you?
Well,
and we
you started with with coffee, you know, and I started with
beer.
With beer.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
Stimulant.
I want to talk about, some people know this, but I want to talk about how you got cast in Home Improvement. Do you want my perspective? I want to hear your perspective, and then I'm going to give you my perspective.
Okay.
Because it was a circuitous journey.
It really was.
To get you on Home Improvement for all those years.
Well, something this massive, and in my life, this is massive. Mm-hmm. I was able to walk it back to things that happened, or acquaintance that turned into a friend, or turned into something. So I was able to walk this back quite a few years. I'm not specific on the actual years, but it started in Holland, Michigan.
Yes. Hope Summer Rep, which was the first professional theater I ever directed in when I got out of graduate school.
Wow.
It was the very first professional gig as a director was in Hope.
It's the best.
Yeah.
I think of any summer theater because they do it in rotating rep.
Yeah.
You got 5 shows rotating. I mean, for the crew, it's a lot of work, but for the actor, you're maybe doing 3 shows a week.
Right.
Or 4, depending on the rotation.
Okay.
But yes, I did a show called Strider, directed by the head of the theater department at Evansville,
John David
Lutz. And John and I kind of butted heads. Not that I'm a difficult person to work with.
You're horrible to work with. You're just terrible.
What I didn't realize at first was he had just directed this show, Strider, at Evansville.
Okay.
And he was trying to get me to do, I think, what the other actor had done, or what he had already done, and was comfortable and knew it would work. And I had other ideas. I had other ways of kind of coming to stuff, and we butted heads until opening night, and then the show opened, and it was great. It worked, and everything relaxed. And he went, okay, I see how this is, and we became friends that way.
Right.
And then
John David Lutz, by the way, just for people listening, was my professor at the University of Evansville.
Wow.
He's the man I trained under for 4 years of undergraduate school. He's the man who directed Between Daylight and Boonville, my first full-length play. Wow. So that's a connection I didn't know we had either.
Yeah.
So, okay, but please continue. Okay, so John David Lutz, Hope Summer Rep.
And that had to be like the summer of, I don't know, 83.
Uh-huh.
84, 85, somewhere in there, in early 80s. And then I get a call from him a few years later saying that they needed an actor for this playwrights conference. And I go, what do you mean a playwrights conference? And well, they need actors to read things as the writers are there rewriting. And I went, oh, that's interesting. You know, that never occurred to me that's basically what you were doing with TV shows in a lot of ways. But I said, okay, well, it pays. I go, great, $100 a week stipend, but you get, room and board. And I go, okay. At this point in my career, yes is the operative word. You just
say yes to everything.
You don't know
work begets work.
You don't know who you're going to run into. And at
the New Harmony Project,
which
I'm a founding board member.
I met you, and I met David, and I met Carmen.
Unbelievable.
And
David being David McFadden and Carmen Finestra, the co-creators along with me of Home Improvement.
Right.
Before we even thought about Home Improvement or met Tim or anything.
No, you had just come off the first season of Roseanne, which was a little disturbing for you guys because you asked her to do stuff and she wouldn't do it, and then she did it.
That's all lies.
Okay,
sweetheart,
well,
a doll.
We won't go to that, but I, me being me, I didn't know how hard you guys work doing those shows week to week to week to week, and I think I kind of tried to convince you to do a parody play of all of the characters at New Harmony, the directors and the other actors and all that. I said, it'd be really funny at the end of the 2 weeks, we could put a little skit together.
Right.
And if I had known, you guys were up till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning rewriting, and this is your summer vacation, and I'm like, hey, we should do this. I'm
Keep
like
writing.
Yeah, I'm like 25 or whatever, and said, let's do this. And we did that, and we had a lot of fun. It was really.
And you were remarkable. I remember because you could jump from role to role, and sometimes you didn't even know what you were going to be reading till the day of.
Yeah.
And you were really flexible and could roll with anything and rewrites, and that was impressive. You just whatever was thrown your way, you did it.
And that didn't seem abnormal.
Right.
That just seemed like an actor's life.
Right.
In this situation, I figured, well, okay, we're working with the writers,
right,
which I hadn't done before. I hadn't worked with writers.
Right.
I was doing classical plays, that were written 300 years ago.
Right.
You don't mess with that. You don't. I think let's rewrite this joke.
Right.
Romeo says to, I think there's a funnier way to go. No, we didn't do that. We, so this was kind of new. But I met you guys.
Right.
Still living in New York.
Right.
And still living in New York for another couple of years. And when I came out, I called you guys up. I maybe David, I don't know if I was brave enough to call you or what, but you guys were doing Carol and Company.
Right, with Carol Burnett.
And they said, yeah, maybe at some point there'll be a little thing. And there was a couple of lines that the regular cast. And that's when I met Richard Karn.
Right.
Who we now get mixed up, because of our names are so similar. But,
right.
But
another sweetheart in the business.
Another sweetheart.
One of the sweetest men.
But so I got to do my first big television thing with Carol Burnett and you guys. And then I'm doing Shakespeare's Scottish play. At the First Baptist Church of Beverly Hills. It's probably the only Baptist church in Beverly Hills. It's not the first, it's the only. And I got a traffic ticket. I think that's the bad luck associated with doing this play. Because there's always some sort of bad luck that happens. And I get a traffic ticket and I go to traffic school for 8 hours and I sit next to this lovely woman who turns out to be an agent, I think at the Gersh agency.
Right.
And we're talking about people we know in the business for 8 hours. We're learning, that the only thing to fall out of a car legally is water or chicken feathers. These are the kind of things we learn. And she goes, well, these guys, are doing a show. And they go, they are? They didn't call me. Indignant without, any animosity about that. So I called David. I said, hey, I hear you guys are doing a new show. And David, always the diplomat, goes, yes, yeah. And it's with this new comic. There's nothing in it for you, Richard. we've thought about you, but we have a neighbor who is older, and we've cast him, and we have an assistant of Tim's named Glenn.
Glenn. His original name was Glenn.
Who is going to be played by Stephen Topolowsky.
Right.
And I go, Stephen Topolowsky? Yes, he was in Groundhog Day as
But
the life
also,
insurance salesman.
I just want to jump in here. Because we didn't call you from day one talking to Tim about the role of the assistant on Tool Time, we always said he was tall, thin, and bald.
Right.
And so that was our...
Was that similar to like one of his...
Stephen Topolowsky. And it was similar to a neighbor in Michigan where Tim said, he had the neighbor who...
Well, the neighbor.
Yeah, but he had this wacky neighbor, and he described me. He says he's real tall. He's over 6 feet tall. He's bald, and he's skinny. So we said, that's Glenn. That's who the assistant is on Home
Physically
Improvement.
Different, a little older, so there's a lot of things to play.
But Stephen Tobolowsky, when we went to shoot the pilot, was off doing a movie.
Do you remember which one? Because I don't.
Was it Mississippi Burning?
It could have been, but I thought maybe that was earlier, but it could have been Mississippi Burning.
Okay.
And it could have been The Invisible Man with Chevy Chase.
Yep.
But he was married to Beth Henley.
Yeah, the playwright.
So, this guy never has stopped working.
Always working.
But David was great. He said, everything is cast, but come in and meet Deborah Brilski. She's our casting director. You don't know her. This will be wonderful.
Right.
You'll get to meet her, and maybe somewhere down the line, there'll be another guest star thing like for Carol and Company. I went, oh, great. Thank you. That's great. And I go home and I get the script and I read the script, and it's Glenn working with a lathe.
Uh-huh.
And so I had a friend of mine, and we worked out the scene, and I go, maybe I'll make a lathe noise. I'll go, boo, boo. When you're working with a lathe, it's the whole assistant thing. Boo, what you want to, boo. And I made you guys laugh.
You did.
I walked into that room. I knew you, David, Carmen. I didn't know Deborah Borelski, and I knew John Pasquin for being
the director.
A reader with him 10 years before in New York.
Incredible.
So I knew everybody in the room except her, and so I felt very comfortable. There was nothing at stake because everything was cast.
Right.
All I had to do was just do this scene, and I did the scene. You guys laughed, and then John stops and goes, "Try it again. This time, I want you to make the lathe sound like a question."
I don't remember this.
I'm a trained actor. I go, I take that and I go, yeah, okay. That's not odd. I go, okay, so when you're working with a lathe, what you want to go, and you guys, because later I realized because of the Tim Allen grunt,
right? Right.
He was playing with me, but I did it.
Yeah.
And I walked out of that room feeling very good about that.
Right.
And then a couple of weeks later, Carmen calls me.
Right.
So, Rick, do you still have that beard? Because I'd grown the beard for the Scottish play,
yes,
the Shakespeare Scottish play. I said, yeah. He says, well, it seems that Stephen got a movie, and we know you're a good guy, and you wouldn't be upset if we asked you to do the pilot. And in my head, I'm going, ask me to do the pilot? Why would I be upset about that? And he says, because if it gets picked up, we would bring Stephen back in. And I went, absolutely. Are you kidding me? I have nothing like this on my resume. I am so honored to be able to do that for you guys. And I'm assuming you went back, you took out, some of Glenn's lines and stuff, because I'm not that character. Mm-hmm. And Tim's big joke on me was, I think, spackling Al's butt crack shut.
All right, Al, let's have a drill, please. Woo! Look at that butt crack you got going there. I think we got to start today by spackling Al's butt crack shut, huh? With the new patch and fade butt crack filler putty.
That was the big thing, and I just was sweeping up in the background, and
you had one line in the pilot.
Not that line, though.
No. It wasn't, I don't think so, Tim?
No, it was like the second or third episode, because Stephen got another movie, and after the show got picked up, which obviously, every ad agency loved this show.
Right.
they said, Stephen got another movie. We might need you to do, 2 or 3 episodes. And I go, oh my God.
And every step of the way, we were honest. We said, Richard,
totally honest.
We're going to keep using you, but as soon as he's freed up.
But did you realize Tootie was pregnant now?
I didn't. Tootie is your wife.
My wife.
Of how many years?
Well, it'll be 38 this year.
38 years. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But Tootie was pregnant.
With
Cooper, your son.
I'm an apartment manager. I'm, an actor with a great credit now, and a couple of more episodes. And I don't think it was like the second or third show where Tim had this joke like, hey, Al, you think they call it molding because it's been in the refrigerator too long? And I just let him have that laugh. It's like I'm throwing grapefruits up for him to hit out of the park, and I know my place, and he gets that laugh, and I just let him have the laugh. I let the audience have the laugh, and the audience hasn't seen the show yet.
Yes,
they don't know who these people are.
Right,
they're just watching a little play.
The live audience at the taping, so it's not aired yet.
Yeah.
They're watching this cold.
So I let him have that line, and I'm just looking at him. I'm not doing anything. My face is relaxed. I'm not trying to overact and just as I'm about to say this line, there's another laugh. And I immediately, in nanoseconds, I go, oh shit, did I milk that? I didn't milk that. I don't think, but it's a nice laugh. I guess it's a reaction to me looking at Tim. I guess I don't know. This is all happening in fast. So I let that laugh happen, and then I look at him and I go, I don't think so, Tim.
I don't think so, Tim.
George, hold your own nail.
I don't think so, Tim.
Lisa?
I don't think so, Tim.
And that got a laugh.
Huge laugh.
And all day long, if I passed you in the hallway, you would look at me and go, boy, you did yourself a favor there. And I go, I had one line.
I don't think so, Tim.
I don't think so, Tim.
But I want to point this out. People think sitcoms, all comedy, is about jokes. And they think it's Baba Bing. And I love a good joke. Mm-hmm. But truly, it's about defined characters with a worldview and characters who think funny. And the fact that you got a laugh by just staring at him, and then I don't think so, Tim, is not a joke. It's all attitude.
It's all, yeah.
But it was what was going on in your brain at that moment that made it funny.
Well, I didn't even think of myself as the put upon assistant.
Right.
Because I'm just filling in. I'm not in my mind, I'm not the assistant.
Right.
I am Richard Karn filling in for Stephen Topolowski, and I'm letting Tim have laughs.
Right.
I'm doing this great gig for a couple of shows, but the audience was way ahead of us.
Yeah.
They saw this relationship before we did.
Yes.
And you saw that and were able to realize you could write into that.
Well, what we saw was something you can't write, but you write to, and that's chemistry. Mm-hmm. And you two had a chemistry for whatever reason you just did. And also, you were the second banana, and you knew that was your role. You were the straight man to the wacky guy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till, I don't know, halfway through the first season, I went, oh, the reason this role of Al Borland's so important, he is the point of view of the audience. How Al Borland looks at Tim is how the audience is going, are you really going to plug that in? So I remember you getting laughs. Tim would pull something out, and all you would do is turn and look at it, and they would start laughing because you were their point of view and go, are you really that much of an idiot? You're going to try and...
Tim. And he would always draw me in. And I remember, at one point, you or Carmen or somebody said, you don't have to go from A to Z. This isn't a play.
Yes.
You've got 10 seasons or 8 or how many seasons to get there. So you don't have to go all that way. Yeah. And I was working, as a play
right
to get that A to Z, transition. And then every week you'd be back at A.
Absolutely.
Learning
because
again.
if we had changed you, it's not like a streaming show where at the end of 12 episodes, there are different characters. There's been an arc. If we had arced it out,
right,
and by the end of the first season, Tim wasn't interested in tools, or you were bossy to Tim or something, they have to be consistent characters.
Yeah. But you did have to convince Tim that he could be friends with Al.
Yes.
He wasn't quite sure that Al was the kind of guy he would have as a friend.
Right. Right. Well, the character Tim used Al as kind of his whipping post, right?
Right.
And
then could go home.
I've never said this to anyone, and I'm not going to name names. I used to go to a gym early in the morning when we were doing the show. And the fellow who ran the gym had an assistant, and the dynamic was almost identical to the dynamic between Tim and Al. And the gym owner would make fun of him or berate him in front of the clientele as they worked out. And then he would pout, and I would watch this, and I'm going, oh, and so that informed kind of the relationship. But you always had the last word because Tim would do something to screw up.
Yeah.
But that relationship was informed by those 6 a.m. gym visits and watching that dynamic.
Man, wow.
Yeah, it's interesting what all feeds there.
Wow. Well, and I don't know if you've talked about this, but when Francis left.
Yeah.
Have you talked about that?
No.
Because as a young actor, watching, big time television happening.
Right.
Not really realizing, that I'm in the midst of something that's really, really special and unusual and wonderful. 3 days into rehearsal, this wonderful actress, Frances Fisher, got replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And that freaked me out a little bit. It was like I went to Carmen. I went to Carmen. I said, "Hey, are we that indisposable? I mean, can you just do that?
Right.
We have 7 more days before you're going to do the pilot, and you're changing a wife."
Right.
And Carmen went, "Rick, it wasn't right. We had an audience, not a big audience, but we had an audience, and there was a line that happened, and it wasn't right." I go, well, she's an actress. Can't she change that line? She goes, no, it goes deeper than that. Yep. It goes to relationship. And, when she has to leave and she knows Tim wants to fix the dishwasher,
right,
which was the pilot, fixing the dishwasher. And she goes,
"Don't touch the dishwasher."
Don't touch the dishwasher. I'll show her.
The audience with Francer was, oh yeah, he might do that. Oh no, gosh! And when Pat did it, it was like, oh no, he's gonna do that. She's gonna come on. It was like a 360, and that was a valuable lesson in chemistry. And
it's not about talent. It's not about craft. It's just it goes back to that ineffable thing called chemistry and the right dynamics between the characters.
Right.
Because you can give this, 4 or 5 wonderful actors the same line and do the scene with them, but one of them's going to spark something in you.
Something's going to be different.
That's a little different. And I always say when the camera's rolling, when there's a camera on, what's happening here, the camera's really recording this energy between us. So as you think and I think, there's something going on right here.
Yeah.
And that is that ineffable energy field, that thing that happens when you have chemistry between these people, because you can say your line, I can say my line, but then there's that third element, and you just get lucky and hit it sometimes,
Yeah. And we were able to create the character together.
Yeah. Well, you added so much, and you would have ideas, and the more
But at first, I didn't really know how to articulate that kind of thing. I would watch Tim and Pat, say stuff, and I knew well enough to know that I'm not ready yet.
Yep.
But I think the first time I felt like I could do that was the ice fishing episode.
Yes, tell the story.
The ice fishing episode was one of the first times that Tim and I really go outside of tool time.
Right. I remember
that. I invite him up to this ice fishing shack, a friend of mine. And when we get there, it didn't feel like our relationship was outside of work. It just felt like the same.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to say, or I wanted something a little different. And there was little changes here and there, enough for me to feel okay. But I knew there was something more that I wanted to get across as as opposed to just a tool time relationship.
Right.
And that was big for me. And that was with Elliot.
Yeah.
I had to not put my foot down, but
No, you ask. But also, here's the thing. When you're writing for a long-running sitcom, I'm sure you look at Friends or Cheers or any of them. I'm talking about those that ran 8 years, 11 years. You, as the writer, are informed more by the actors playing those characters. You know what you write to their strengths, avoid their weaknesses. You kind of know what
their rhythm
is. You can hear their voices, and it makes it so much easier to write. Because when you're writing a pilot, you don't know who's playing the role.
Right.
Now, we knew Tim was going to play Tim, but we didn't.
But even Tim didn't know what Tim was going to be.
No, he didn't. No, we took his stand-up, more power, his stand-up routine. But what people had to realize is we had to populate his world so his point of view was always challenged or heightened, or we could exacerbate any situation with the other characters or frustrate him. So it was taking his stand-up and then building Wilson, Glenn/Al, the wife. And I remember the network kept saying, he's got to have a little girl. He's got to have a daughter. Wouldn't it be so cute to see Tim with a little girl? And we kept saying, no. This is a male household. These are 3 young men. And Tim wants them to dance naked and howl at the moon.
Is that car running? Shake it off.
Are you all right, Dad?
And she's trying to raise 3 future husbands. So you see the ongoing conflict there?
I do.
It's just, right.
Was there ever a point, I can't remember, was there ever a point where one of the kids' girlfriends had a scene with Tim where he could be with a young girl?
I'm sure it was. I flashed to the Goldfish episode, but I don't know if he had a scene with the
I
girlfriend.
don't think he ever had the scene with the girlfriend.
Right.
Which would have been interesting.
Yeah. But then on Last Man Standing, he's got a house full of daughters, so
Yes.
it made up for it.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of doing the show? Is it keeping it fresh? Is it worrying about blowing a finger off at dual time?
I never felt like we couldn't keep it fresh.
Yeah.
Because every little Tool Time was like ninja comedy.
Yeah.
You got in, you got your laugh, you got out. It was like a minute and a half out of the show, really. And then every once in a while I'd be in other scenes.
Right.
But I was just, it was over before you know it. And it's so funny because for 20 years I've been telling stories about stuff and I hadn't rewatched the show.
Uh-huh.
And now that it's on Hulu.
Yeah, talk about that.
Now, it finally started streaming on Hulu. For whatever reason, I didn't open up my DVD pack and watch the show. I don't know why I didn't do that, but all of a sudden it was on Hulu and I could watch it in order.
Yep.
So I went to the first season and I watched the first show, the second show, and I watched the evolution of these characters from that point of view. And I remember, I think this is the episode where I told this story and then it wasn't there. I'm telling stories about stuff that never showed up on screen. It was all off stage or it got cut. And that was another interesting thing because when I would watch the show and things would have to be edited,
right.
And they did because we only got 22 minutes.
Right.
I'd go, they edited this thing out.
And then in syndication, we'd have to cut another minute. Even more out.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would be a little upset because I did this so that this would flow and make sense, and now that's gone, and now 30 years later, when I watch it, I'm just laughing. I don't see any of the stuff. I don't remember any of the stuff that was cut. I'm just enjoying
about YouTube. Before we started this podcast, you were talking about the YouTube and people watching the show. Explain that to me.
Okay. There are cast members of shows that are now podcasting or something, live zooming.
Live zooming, okay.
Where they watch the show with maybe a couple of guest stars or whatever, and they talk about stuff that happened or how that scene evolved,
Okay.
or where that was like that, and people are interested in watching that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our show would, we had, well, you guys put in the
blooper.
credits, the bloopers. Nobody was doing that.
No.
maybe
All the outtakes, we just said, that's so funny. It's got to be in the show somewhere.
Yeah.
So, and it ended up in the credits.
Well, that's our show for today. Al, why don't you tell everybody about the good show coming? Well, that's all she wrote for today.
That's right.
not in the hamstring. Exactly, and that surprised us because you didn't say anything until it aired, and I went, "What? Is this going to be a regular thing?" Oh my gosh, yeah, but
Well, it was a good set, and I always said, you and Tim especially, but everyone on the show, but you and Tim especially, if you could make the camera guys laugh,
yeah,
you knew you found something. You would be working out a physical bit, and if you got the guys behind the camera laughing, you knew you landed on something. Yeah.
Well, Tim would come in with something that happened to him that night, and he would work that all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like reworking a stage comedy act.
Yeah.
With just something that happened to him, and maybe it wasn't funny at 9 a.m., but by 2 p.m, you're laughing.
Yeah. Yep.
And then there would be just little physical bits that would just crack us up. I remember the episode where we had those dowlings.
Yes.
And Tim just loves to shake stuff in my face, and he's got the dowling, and he literally he will keep doing that until I laugh. I mean, if I don't laugh, it frustrates him, and he just gets more manic. But he's and I took it. I took the thing like that, and I took it away from him, and then he had one in his back pocket, and he goes. God, and that's one of the early episodes where Tim was working with a router.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going, and I'm trying to caution him about the routing. He goes, "Oh, Al, I know what I'm doing." And he's got the router, and then he gets away from him, and he goes, like
Exactly.
all over the place.
Yes.
And I'm standing there, and it was so funny. It was so funny. I thought I had broke. I thought I had laughed. And I was like, "Oh man, now we're gonna have to do that again." That was so funny. And we go back and we look at it, and I'm stone faced.
Are you?
I did not laugh, but I thought I had. I thought I had just ruined.
And if you had laughed, it would have ruined it. And it was that deadpan stare at him that was so funny that would add icing on top of icing of that laughter, right? Yeah.
Man,
That I was going to ask you, because you've done commercials, you've did this show. Are you good with your hands? Do you work construction? Do you know how to use tools?
well, my dad was a builder,
Okay.
and he came to the set. Remember, he would sit
Yes.
there all day long.
Yep.
And you asked him a few technical questions every once in a while. The crutch,
Yep.
with Bob Vila.
Yep.
Oh well, we can't say that.
Yep.
So I guess we'll have to call it a lean-to or something. But
See, I work construction, and I did every summer because all my uncles were builders. They were
Right.
independent contractors. And when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, I was a carpenter's assistant, a hod carrier.
Mhm.
And all that training, and I worked for my Uncle Louis Heyer, and boy, he was tough. 7 o'clock, the truck pulled up. He turned it off. He walked across the lot, and he walked up to the scaffolding. And by 7:01, he wanted to lay the mud and put the first brick down. So that means you had to be there at 6 to mix the mud, get the bricks and everything ready. The reason I bring this up, when I talk to students, I go, I think I learned how to run and write a television show by working construction. Because when you think about it, you show up,
Mhm.
you got a script, which is your blueprint.
right.
You got a director, who's your foreman. You've got all this equipment, and you've got a crew. And you better be organized to know who needs to do what. And someone's got to be guiding this, your foreman.
Right.
And I think that mentality of how to run a show came from working construction all those years.
I bet so.
Yeah.
I bet so.
Yeah.
And interesting with television, you as a producer is more of that. If you're doing a movie, it's the director.
It's the director.
You don't have the producer.
When you're the showrunner, everything. I used to say, you think in terms of three. What did we shoot last week? What are we shooting this week? What are we shooting next week? We're editing that show. We're rewriting this one, and we're beating out a future. So I was always thinking in three parts of my brain was always working as we were mapping out, because we did 22 or 25 episodes.
We started out, I think, with 24 or 5, or did we do all 25?
I think we did 22 or 23, and then went up to 25.
We went to 25
right
the
away.
Second season.
Yeah, and that's a lot of.
Nobody else was doing that, really.
No, it was a lot.
Yeah,
but it was fun. Let me ask you this: you mentioned Tootie, your wonderful wife. Funny.
We met doing a play.
But I was just going to say, she's a brilliant actress. She's been married 38 years. And that marriage has endured. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Well, you've been doing that.
Yeah. Angelina and I are only 36 years.
Okay.
So we're 2 years behind you. But we dated for 2 years. So it's 38 years.
But that's 36 in a row.
Yes. Yes.
Which is important to note.
What is the key? Did you guys just talk a lot? Did you work it out? Did you?
Yeah. Well, she was musical theater.
Right.
And I was kind of straight plays,
right,
without music. So we didn't cross over into, I wish I'd gotten that show and you got it and I didn't, or whatever.
Right.
So there wasn't that kind of thing going on. Respect for the craft
and understanding what the other person,
understanding what the other person needs.
Right.
And being able to allow that to happen.
Right.
A lot of people, I know what that is, but I don't want to do it. Well, you just compromise. Yeah, But when she auditioned for Home Improvement, it was really exciting. That Deborah asked her to audition for one of the sisters.
Right.
And then when she got it, this little thing in my head, it dawned on me, oh my God, what if she doesn't feel good? What if, because we had guest stars that didn't do well. One we could talk about.
Or maybe not.
What if, and they changed her character drastically from a private jet stewardess to a photographer. Now all of a sudden she has a prop to have to work with.
Right.
Within, 3 days.
Right.
And if she doesn't feel good, or if she gets let go, or it's not working, it's like, well, now that's when you'd have to start talking to career counseling or marriage counseling or whatever.
Right.
I think because I would just feel horrible.
Right.
And she would feel like I don't respect her, or maybe, I don't know.
Right.
But that never happened.
It never happened.
She rose to the occasion. She did it. She was brilliant. There was a sigh of relief. Whew. But there was a character that didn't work so much with the audience, but on camera worked great. Was the Stewster, which was Chris McDonald.
Yep.
And Chris is great. He's funny,
brilliant actor, funny.
But when he crushed that beer can and cut his head open, and there was blood, and the audience just they
kind
were
of a comedy killer. Everybody kind of went. Ugh.
They were on Jill's side.
They were.
Because he was the college friend that's just a horrible influence and too loud and too, whatever. And that was interesting. But on camera, it worked. It worked fine.
You, I'm sure, get recognized all the time. Do people feel like they know you because you've been in their living room for so many years? You're walking through an airport or something.
Yeah. Well, it has. It's now, oddly enough, it's not really about me. I don't think it's about me anymore.
Right.
It's about people's memories of them watching the show with their family.
Got it.
And it's time after time. We watched with my grandparents. We watched with my parents. We watched with my siblings growing up. We had to make time.
Appointment TV. Yeah.
and watch it. And
Ooh, look at that.
yes, I have arrived.
You have arrived.
Thank God.
You are on Glimpses, the podcast. And that's what got you here through all that traffic.
And I kept changing. I don't know if people put in directions on their phone and then they know better, so they take lefts and rights, and then it has to recalculate and everything. But there's you don't know when
That would be a good Home Improvement episode, by the way.
Oh,
Al and Tim in the car with
if he could beef that up,
yeah.
So all of a sudden he's got like a helicopter following him overhead or something. I don't know, but
You as an actor now, and you're in your mature years, is there a role that you always wanted to play that you haven't gotten a chance to play?
yeah. But now I don't think I could memorize it.
Okay, what would that role be?
That's the that's
What's the
irony.
role?
Well, any of the big Shakespeares.
It's so funny. I knew that for some reason. I put King Lear, Falstaff.
Falstaff for sure. Oh, I'd love to.
Prospero.
I don't know if Angela Lansbury had an earwig,
Did she?
and she just had someone feeding her lines if she'd go up or whatever, which was great for her. But other people on stage,
Yeah.
the timing is all thrown off.
Yeah.
The audience doesn't know,
Right.
but the other actors are like,
Okay. So you'll play Falstaff with an earwig.
I
I'm not pinning you down.
yeah, I
here.
know. Well, later this month. I'm playing a papa. I'm playing a grandpa.
Okay.
Um,
You're not a grandpa yet in real life?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, I have a 31-year-old son who was
I know.
born the first season of Home Improvement.
Absolutely. Cooper,
Yes.
Yep.
I left rehearsal to go to the hospital.
to see your son born.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
Because my son was born during Home Improvement. Fred is 33. And
Well, before then, wouldn't it be before Home? Because Cooper's 31, and he was born first season,
first season.
March of first season of '92. We started in '91. Was Fred 90 or 89?
Oh, I may be thinking he was born
Roseanne?
during Roseanne.
Maybe.
They all blend together. Kids, TV shows,
Yeah.
it all blends.
Well, I only had one, and I had two life-changing events all in the same year with Cooper and Home Improvement.
Wow.
And I had the day job
Right.
as an apartment manager
Yep.
for like the first 3 months. I go, well, I can't give up. And I look back at it, and they paid me rent. So I was making $900 a month
Okay.
to manage this 30 unit apartment or whatever. But the straw that broke the camel's back was getting a call early in the evening and saying that their sink was stopped up, and I went down there. I can fix that. I know how to fix that. And I walk in there, and there's like 10 of their friends, and they all go, "Look, Al's our manager."
Are you kidding me?
No.
So the apartment manager was Al Borland.
Yeah. And they were
Wow.
showing me off as their apartment manager.
And you think, maybe
I
it's
went,
time I put the day job to
I
rest.
think I can. Yeah, I think we're okay right now.
Let's talk about you and Tootie. You toured, though, for a while together, didn't you, doing plays? Didn't you?
We
through the
met
Midwest?
doing a play
You met, I knew
directed
that.
by Walter Bobby,
Okay. Yep.
who later got the Tony for the reworking of Chicago.
Right.
And he feels like he cast us.
Okay.
So he was at our wedding and all
Okay.
that. But then I got another show off Broadway, and the actress had to leave, and Tootie was able to step in.
And
So that
that's-
was like the second time we got to work with each
Okay.
other off Broadway.
Okay.
And then 20 years later, I decide, maybe it's time to do theater again.
Uh-huh.
Cooper's now in college,
Right.
and I didn't do any theater. And I had offers, really interesting things like doing art on the West End. And I thought, well, I can't.
The
because
play art.
The play
not-
art.
Yeah.
The play
right.
art. And
Mhm.
I can't leave Tootie, to bring up and go off to London for 6 months. That's just ridiculous, or however long. So,
Right.
I just didn't do any theater that would take me away every night until 20 years later. And then in my head, I go, hey, maybe it's time to do theater. And literally a week later, I get a phone call from a company in Kansas City asking if I'd like to do a musical of Spelling Bee.
Okay.
25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. I go, wow. And this is like in October, right? And it's
Right.
and they go, well, yeah, it would be in March. And I go, well, I don't. That's a few months. No, not this March. A year from this March. And I went, oh, okay, yeah.
I got time to memorize.
So I had a year and a half to worry about whether I could remember lines, whether I could actually remember, more than 3 minutes without.
Instead of ninja comedy that lasts a minute and a half.
Yeah, you get so comfortable, oh, I screwed up. Let's do that again, or whatever. But
there's no retakes or outtakes.
So that company in Kansas City then brought in Tootie because she had worked with them years ago in Nonsense at one of their other theaters, and then we did a murder mystery, Sheer Madness, together, and that was really fun.
Good.
20 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, Glimpses is a book that I've written. It's called Glimpses. It's a comedy writer's take on life, love, and all that spiritual stuff. And it's kind of a memoir, but it's told through humorous essays and spiritual musings. But the premise of the book is really to encourage people to find little glimpses of God. And by God, I mean kindness, compassion, tenderness. With all the negativity we have in the world.
Kind of things that people don't think of God about anymore.
No, yeah. Instead of just compassion.
It's like, well, God wouldn't want that.
Yeah. It's not that. Yeah.
Well, he's not going to kill them. Well, he did in the Old Testament. Yeah. No, he didn't. Oh, did you read the Old Testament? He didn't. Well, what about the flood? That was a teaching story. Okay.
But finding little glimpses of tenderness, goodness, moments of grace.
Yes.
Do you find those glimpses in your life? Do you
Yes.
see glimpses?
Oh, we still look at each other and go, thank God for Home Improvement, for you guys giving us that shot, just for Cooper, for the, staying grounded.
That's
And Cooper kind of grounded me.
That's important.
Because, all that television money, which, we lived in New York, and I didn't feel like we were starving or that, but we were way under the maybe $12,000 to $15,000 a year, but our rent was very low. We didn't have a car. We didn't have insurance. We got by fine.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you own a house, if you have a child.
Raising a baby, yeah.
And we had, and instead of spending all that money that I was making right away, I put it away.
Yeah.
I stayed grounded. I'd be dead by now if I was 25 and single when I got Home Improvement. Probably.
I don't think. I think one of the things about you is besides being really talented and a really smart actor, I think people have to understand that you were trained as an actor. You challenged John David Lutz up at Hope Summer Rep.
Yeah.
You brought questions to the character of Al, and you're smart enough. And what I appreciate about you is you were smart enough to read the room and go, okay, what's happening today on the set? And if things were leaning this way, you would kind of adjust the ballast and go, oh, let's bring it over here, because you are genuinely a kind-hearted person. You are a nice person. And sometimes that's dismissed. Sometimes that's, oh, yeah, right. But when you are working how many hours a week with the same crew over and over every season.
And we did have the same crew for 8 years.
8 years. That quality of being cooperative, affable, positive, just changes the energy in the studio. And because, as you know, some sets are just venomous, but you really help lighten the load and bring a certain degree of light to the set of Home Improvement. And I just wanted to publicly say that to you, because you were a major factor in just keeping the tone of the show and the sensibility of joy alive from week to week on Home Improvement. So,
well, it was a joy.
Yeah.
I mean, we were creating funny things, and then when the audience started to pay attention, it was like, oh, this is even better.
Yeah.
Now we know why we're doing this, and people are appreciating it.
Yeah.
The critics, not so much.
I've now been 40 years in this business, and I don't think I've ever had anything that was critically acclaimed. and that's fine. I think the critics dismissed Home Improvement and said, I remember one snarky, I think it was a New York Times, said, this show will never last because how many toasters can Tim blow up?
Yeah.
And you go, you're missing the point.
You're missing, well, probably didn't watch the show.
Well, it's not about blowing up stuff. It's not even about tools. It's about this relationship, and especially it's about the male-female relationship.
Right.
Everything was through the prism of feminine versus masculine, right? And embodied in Tim and Jill, but Al's very feminine side, sensitive side, would drive Tim crazy. So even on Tool Time, there was a masculine and feminine point of view always in conflict. And I don't think this is all the pre-thought, because we had a year to think about this show before we wrote the pilot and talk to Tim and do research.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because most pilots, you get the idea, you slam it together, 12 weeks, 14 weeks later, you got a pilot script. Because we were doing Carol and Company, we had time to sit with Tim. We had time to read Iron John, the book. We had time to read Deborah Tannen's book, You Don't Just Understand, which is her whole premise was men and women don't speak the same language. Men are hierarchical and competitive. Women look for connections. Women think this way. Men think linear. Now we can, in today's world, say, okay, those are stereotypical gender roles. But 30-something years ago, that book really informed us on Home Improvement how to write the pilot. And the premise for Home Improvement was men and women should never live together ever. That's what David and Carmen and I talked about. But every week we're going to examine how men and women live together, how that happens. Now that wasn't in that context. Today it would be a different show with gender identity in that, and we change with the times. But back then that was very clearly defined. And I was talking to George Lopez on a podcast about the universality of family sitcoms. When you think about that, Rick, everyone's got a family. And Home Improvement was number one in Australia, in Germany, all over the world.
Oh, yes.
Because I think they could identify with the family, with those characters. And it's.
But also you had a soul of the story with Wilson.
Yes.
Being able to, kind of bring the moral of the story together.
Right.
Which was not always done.
Right.
The moral of the story sometimes would get glossed over in other shows and like that.
No, with Wilson as a device, you always had, and that came out of Iron John, that every young boy needs a man to teach him how to be a man. Now, this goes back to the men's movement. And again, we're talking 30 plus years ago. It would be a different show if we were writing it today, just because the times changed. But Wilson was that ultimate mentor.
Right.
And it was fun, and God bless Earl. He was a sweetheart.
I know. And he wasn't originally cast.
No, this is what 3 different cast members who were originally cast didn't end up on the show. And the actor, and I'm not going to say his name, who we originally cast as Wilson, and we told him every step of the way, you will never be seen. Do you realize for the life of the series, you're going to be behind a fence?
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. None. We sent the pilot cussing us out. You think I'm going to stand behind a fence? Are you out of your mind? This was 3 days before we started shooting the pilot. Yeah.
I thought it was the agent that turned it down.
No. This actor absolutely refused to be this guy behind the fence.
Oh.
So we went, well, we better scramble. So we got Debbie Brulski, said, get all those audition tapes out. Let's just start going through audition tapes. And we were up all night going through audition tapes. And we heard this voice.
Well, if you needed help, why didn't you call me?
Oh, wanted to show her that I could do it myself.
Oh, I see. After all this time, you still want to impress your bride.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Jill and I have been married for 13 years. 14 years,
No, Tim.
And he was like doing a play in Louisville, wasn't he?
He came out of theater like you.
Yeah.
He was doing regional theater.
But he had also done 10 years on Ryan's Hope.
On Ryan's Hope, the soap opera.
Yeah.
Yep. So he knew about cameras, and we cast him off the tape.
Oh, wow.
And we just took a chance, and he came out there, and kind of like the chemistry that you and Tim had, Very first day, he's there. And we say, now, Earl, you understand you're going to be behind this fence. No one's ever
He
going to
didn't
see your
care.
face. He goes, that's fine with
his
me.
ego was fine
He
with
goes,
that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And then the chemistry between him and Tim. Again, you write it, but you can't write chemistry. That was just fortuitous, you know?
Well, if Earl and I went out to get a bite or something like that, people would come up to me, but if he talked,
They would recognize.
people would like turn and go, I know that voice. Are you? Oh my God, we saw your voice. We saw your face.
Well, Rick, I'm going to wrap up. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours.
Wait, has this been an hour?
I don't know how long it's been, but
Oh my gosh, this
we
has
can
been
only go
wonderful.
so long. I'm going to look around. I think we're right at an hour. Oh, wow. Okay. So God bless you. I want to say publicly, working with you was always a delight. It's one of the high points of my career. You are so gifted. You are so talented. And you played the second banana better than anyone I've ever seen on television. And here's the thing that does my heart good. My grandchildren will be able to watch you on Home Improvement say, I don't think so, Tim.
Isn't that funny?
It is.
Wow. Sayings just kind of come out. I don't know if there are certain sayings that try to become trademarked or whatever, or how they come about. But this one came about so naturally,
right,
out of nothing but audience reaction.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it was really a throwaway line.
Yeah, it was, but it stuck.
But it stuck. It was hard to do sometimes.
Yeah,
because it would be thrown in somewhere where it didn't really flow.
Right.
You know, but it was there because it was that line.
It became the
And so
catchphrase.
trying to say that line sometimes and mean it, became harder and harder. But then there was that one heartfelt time when I tried to be the host, or he let me be the host, and I'm failing miserably. And then he asks me one of those stupid questions, and I'm just so relieved to say, I don't think so, Tim. To get back on familiar ground.
Yeah. Richard Karn, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank all of you. As you go about your day, I encourage you to take the time to look around and catch a glimpse.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Glimpses YouTube family. I hope you like, subscribe, and enjoy all of the clips and episodes coming your way. As you go about your day, I encourage you all to take a moment, look around, and catch a glimpse.